Okay, yes, T.B.Photo X115FX, and welcome back to another video. Well, in this episode we're gonna talk a bit about this. I go over my BCD for the 11th time. Me fanboying over a Swedish-made red one-piece made in Gothenburg for you people out there. A red tube to mend the wetworks. And back to the 90s with fleece, not the bug type, though a fashion bug made by pet bottles, apparently recycling. And I simp over India animation. Wait, what? Shit. Alright, yes, we're gonna talk a little bit about my wardrobe when it comes to scuba diving, and a little bit of the 3 different outfits that I have for diving, and the method of why I have chosen these ones and what the purpose of them are in order of use, protection, features, and so on. So we're gonna do a little bit. It's gonna be a repeat of old episodes, yes, but I thought I would just tie the sack together, so to speak. That's a Swedish saying, knyta ihop säcken, so to speak, which basically means that you bring everything all together in the end. And that's a little bit what this episode is going to be about. But yeah, we're going to start off right away with the first of the pieces of gear. And it's actually going to be a little bit of an overview of the BCD. So here we go. Well, yes, now we're standing here with my BCD, or buoyancy compensatory device, or BC buoyancy controller, buoyancy control device, buoyancy compensatory device. Loved child has many names, or loved child bears many names, that a Swedish saying goes. But anyway, a little bit of this then. It's called Dacor, by the brand is Dacor, and the model is known as the Rig. There were a couple of versions of this one, which is the back inflate. Then there was also the Rig Pro, and the difference between the Rig and the Rig Pro was that the Rig Pro had a metal back plate, so that was a little bit more professional. It was probably geared more towards the aspiring technical diver. But anyway, let's continue here, shall we? If you want to see it in a movie, I know that License to Kill, Timothy Dalton's second and last Bond movie from 1989, same year as I am, it actually, in that, they actually used some Dacor diving gear actually. So when he's infiltrating the wave crest, it actually is a lot of Dacor gear. Unfortunately, Dacor is not around anymore. From what I've been able to gather, they were purchased by Maurice, which is another scuba brand that has been around for a long time. So there are basically things from Maurice nowadays that were originally Dacor products. But anyway, let's go over this BCD, shall we? As stated, it is a back inflate BCD, which means that the majority of the buoyancy comes into the horseshoe shaped bladder in the back. And there are basically two types of basically 2 types of back inflate BCDs. This one, which is a horseshoe shape, which is basically, if I turn it over like so, it's like an upside down U shape. There is also the donut-shaped ones, which is a complete circle, which makes that air can circulate freely between the right and left side of the BC. But actually, when we're back here, let's see what type of features we have on the back here. Well, we have the back plate here, which is plastic or composite for the securing of the tank. First, we have a tank band up here that goes around the valve. Then this one is actually quite good because it has dual tank bands. So you have one upper, one lower. And on the upper ones, as I showed you in a previous video, I have actually put my Poseidon brand weight pocket. So this is a non-removable trim weight pocket. That is because, as I stated in a previous installment, one drawback that can happen with a back inflate BCD is when you're up on the surface, you're actually tilted a bit forward. But if you have a little bit of a weight here in the back, disregarding the tank, which is also has a fair bit of weight actually. But if you have a little bit of a trim weight, that can actually make you more vertical in the water. So that's what the trim weight pocket is. Let's see if I need it, or if it's just, well, I got this to have just in case. Let's see if I need it. When I tested this out in the pool before purchasing it, I floated no problem vertically, but that was with a wetsuit. If I go over and dive with a dry suit, that might change. And if I have a full wetsuit or a partial wetsuit, all types of factors can change. So this is a good thing to have to, you know, keep your versatility on top. But actually then, double tank bands, something that I really enjoy because I'm really into all types of you know, what is it called? Redundancy. I really like redundancy in all these. And then back to the front then. Well, right shoulder, I have a no-name GoPro replica. This is basically a Chinese rip-off. It's basically Extreme 2 UHD 4K. So apparently this can do 4K video. Not that I need it, I will always use it on full HD because that's what suits my needs thus far. Might be changing in the future, I don't know, but for the time being, full HD, good enough for me. I have it here because I thought it's the best part to have it. It's not in the way of anything. It might be a good starting point to have a action cam to film during dives. Underneath, I have a D-ring that is, this one D-ring is for my octopus holder. I've shown this in a previous video, my little DIY octopus holder. That puts this D-ring out of commission for anything else because it's solely for the octopus, or safe second. So that's it. Another D-ring underneath, might be used in the future, but as it stands, it is too close to the octopus. I want it free, no clutter around, as little clutter as possible around the octopus, because that is, per definition, potentially life-saving equipment. So that's it. Okay, we have the quick detach Vortex. That's from Alec Pierce Scuba, by the way. He calls these Vortex clips because there is a company called Vortex that makes these. So it's basically a brand name that kind of become a slang term for the entire version. So another Vortex male clip here. This is basically if you have certain pieces of gear that you clip off and you can attach a female Vortex on it, you can actually use it on this one. So that's a way to clip things off. Down here, this orange little here, this is a quick detach or a dumpable weight pocket. This is basically that you have another one on the other side as well. These two are the integrated weight pockets. A lot of people nowadays are moving away from using weight belts, which is more traditionalist, and going for weight integrated systems that are dumpable. Another benefit of that is that you don't have to dump all the weight at once. You can dump it in increments, but in a real emergency, it basically is that you have to dump everything at once, because yeah, it's then it's basically the S has hit the fan, so to speak. Okay, moving along to the front of the cummerbund. The cummerbund is basically the belt part that goes along your abdomen that secures the BCD in place. You have the big Vortex strap for it here, and the strap to tighten in it when you have it on. It has a little bit of a pocket in the front here, secured with Velcro and so on. It is a little bit too tight, in my opinion, to have something of real use in here. Maybe you can have one of those plates that you can write on if you need to write a message on the water and so on. So maybe that. And also you have a zip pouch in front here. There is also very little that you can put in this zip front pouch, One thing that I would put in there maybe is something like a, what should we say, a expired driver's license or some kind of ID, because if worse would come to show, at least you will be identifiable. Let's just put it at that. So even though this is a safe sport and so on, it's just a precaution, just a peace of mind for, you know, everybody and everything. Now, I don't think that that is ever a possibility, but it's just peace of mind for, yeah, anyway. Okay, but on this, the previous owner actually installed this dive knife on the front here, on the cummerbund. The reason for this is that in diving, knives are used, but they're never used as weapons, they are tools. And this one, I have put a lanyard on it. Previous owner had a lanyard, but I thought the string was a little bit too flimsy. I wanted it a little bit more, you know, robust. Here it is in this, what is it, safety chartreuse, or this neon green color, just the same as the handle on this knife. It is a serrated blade edge. Why is it good to have a serrated blade when you're diving? Well, this will cut through any type of nylon. If you have fishing lines, if you have nylon straps or anything that needs to be cut in an instant, this is the tool for the job. And as you can see, I have it here with a lanyard that I've made and also a key ring on it, so I can detach it completely. So if I need to hand this to a buddy, if I need to use it and it is out of reach for the lanyard, I can always detach the knife and attach it again. So it is for safety reasons that I can actually detach it from the lanyard. So yeah, a little bit over-engineered maybe from my part, but better safe than sorry. I wouldn't like to have a way to take it off without having to cut the string myself. Oh yeah, on the other side, on the left shoulder, we have the power inflator, and for all of you out there, this is what a power inflator should be, in my opinion. It is big. You have these buttons are big, sturdy, you won't miss them, and the mouthpiece is big. This one you can really use in your, it is on an angle as you can see, so this you can really put on in your mouth to really manually inflate this BC on the surface, no problem whatsoever. The spigot here for the low pressure hose to connect to your first stage. Here, this is Velcro, so you can actually have this a little bit more freely. Yeah, like so, but in my experience with this one, I want to have it here because when I had this not Velcro down, it actually flopped behind me and it was a little bit of a hassle to try to find it when I needed to use it. Underneath, another piece from the previous owner that I'm very pleased to have. Sometimes the most simple pieces of gear can be the most useful. A whistle, this one very good to, you know, call on someone's attention on the surface. Really good. This little piece of technology has probably saved more lives than any other piece of technology for maritime use. But I think that that's it. And yeah, on the lower parts, here we have an emergency dump. It basically means that if a person is starting to ascend to the surface at an alarming rate, either the diver himself or a diving buddy can take a hold of this string and pull it, which means that you're basically dumping air quickly out of the BC, which is made to stop a person ascending to the surface too quickly. Okay, we have two more D-rings down here. First one, I have a double ender with a finger reel or finger spool. These ones, there are a couple of great videos out on YouTube on how to prepare one of these if you are in Nordic climates or in cold climates and so on, how to make some loops on it to make them more easily to handle with gloves and so on. If you have a DSMB, this is basically a must-have item to it. So they go together completely. This one and a DSMB. I can probably have that one also clipped off to the same D-ring and so on. And on the other hand, on the side, the left side, we have a lanyard. This one is set here with this little clip. So, and with another Vortex. With this one, I can basically clip this off to maybe a camera. If I'm gonna perhaps use the Nikonos over here, I can clip that off to this one, so I can have the camera and use it, and if I need to stow it, I just have to clip this off and it will hang to my side, so it's out of reach, it's out of the way for me. Also on this side, I will probably up here clip off, or down here clip off my SPG or my pressure gauge to show how much air I have left in the tank and so on. So that's a little bit of the overview of this BCD. It has served me well thus far, even though I don't have that much experience with it, but that's all about to change in 2021. That's my goal at least. But I thought I would do a little bit of an overview of it to show you guys. So yes, now we are going to the next item on the list. So take care from now on. Okay, well, the next piece of the puzzle here then is my so-called warm weather wetsuit, I would probably call this one. It is a Poseidon One Suit Sport, which is basically a 5mm neoprene wetsuit. I have a little bit of a cheat sheet here for the little bit of the specs and so on it. But basically it's a 5mm standard type wetsuit that was available from Poseidon. It was available in black, gray, blue and red, and as you can see here I chose the one in the red, so to speak. But why would I chose such a color when it comes to a wetsuit? Well, basically, let's see here. Why red? Yeah, visibility, that's the main thing. Well, for you who are into scuba diving, you know that red is one of the first colors that disappear when you're ascending down in the water. But the method to the madness is basically that when you reach the surface, in a sea of black, if I'm starting to do maybe, what should we say, night dives in the future or something like that, I have a color that would basically stand out in the water in low light conditions or even in broad daylight on a blue calm sea surface and so on. This color will basically stand out and I will be clearly visible. That might be also a reason why DSMBs or delayed surface marker buoys or surface marker buoys are usually red. They have also saved countless of lives. So a color that makes you very conspicuous on the surface is a positive in my opinion. Let's see here also. Well, it is from Poseidon then. It's a unisex design, so this model is made both for men and women and everybody in between. It has, as you can see, a front chest zip and a little bit of a collar around the neck. And let's see here, it has a jersey inner lining and a nylon outer shell that is basically the red parts. A little bit of a neat feature on this one is for the wrists and the ankles on the suit, you basically have cuffs. That is, that you have a double-lined cuff on them, so that makes it very good for if you are using gloves or dive boots. It is very easy to make it a little bit more protected and minimize the amount of water going in and out through the suit. So that's a little bit of a feature that drove me to this model, basically. So I really like this with the combination of being a little bit classic design with some more modern features. So basically, why a full bodysuit? Why not just go for one of those shorter ones that are just protecting your torso and abdomen? Well, there is a couple of reasons. As stated before, I did take a diving certificate for PADI back when I was 16. For reference, I'm 31 now. But when we went to Malta on a dive trip, what we had an encounter with on some of the dives, there was a little bit, well, a lot of jellyfish. And these were stinging jellyfish. And I actually got one on my cheek, I remember. That stung like, oh, I'm not even gonna say it, but it begins with B and ends with itch. So yeah, that's, you can take from that what you want. So it's a good practice, in my opinion, then to be fully covered. So if you have animals in the water that sting, that burn and so on, even though you should respect them and keep your distance, well, if you're distracted looking at one thing, an accident happens easily. So for me, it's good to have full protection from wildlife and so on. Another very good reason to have, in my opinion, a full body suit like this is UV protection. Well, if you're in a tropical climate, if you do a shallow reef dive or something, you will be thankful if you have a full protective garment, because that will, you can use rash guards and so on. I like this, but it will help you to protect you from being sunburnt. Even though you're underwater, UV light will penetrate and you can get some sunburn. So yeah, that's basically the reasons why I went with this suit. So this is basically my new for travel and to, you know, have a good time, which diving is supposed to be all about. So yes, this one I actually bought from Poseidon's own website. Unfortunately, they're apparently discontinuing this model, which makes it a little bit that you can get it. Here's the thing. When I got this from the website, the price I paid was more than half of what I found on many retail sites. So this one I would really, if you're interested in getting a Poseidon One Suit Sport, I would really urge you to check out their own website and order directly from them, because that was basically the cheapest alternative in my opinion. Now granted, when this video comes out that might have changed, but that's a little bit of me pointing you in the right direction if you're interested in one of these. So yes, I would think we're just gonna move on then, shall we? Well, now we're going over to something that can basically be regarded as vintage by today's standards. This was actually the one dive suit that I bought, or rather, full disclosure, that I was given or gifted by my parents when I was 16, and I started diving back in high school with the high school diving club. This is basically a Morris Thermic, and it is a semi-dry. So we have gone over now a wetsuit, and this is then the next step up, a semi-dry. And what's so specific with a semi-dry? Well, here's a bit of the difference. A wetsuit enables water to circulate throughout the suit. You will have some, you know, current through it. It will have water going in and it will have a little bit of water going out, even though that's tried to be limited. A semi-dry is basically that the water goes into the suit, so you will have water flow in, but the water will not flow out as easily. That's the main point of it. So that means that the water layer that you have between your skin and the suit will actually keep you a little bit warm, because that will heat up to body temperature and so on. So this is basically a Morris semi-dry and Thermic semi-dry, and it's 7mm. The red Poseidon that I showed you before, it was a 5mm wetsuit. This one is a 7mm. And as you can see, there are some variations of the Mares Thermic. There are both the ones that are like the Poseidon, that is a one-piece, and there is like this one, which is a two-piece. So you have a jacket with an integrated hood and so on, and you have these pants with a abdomen and torso part. And yeah, as you can see here, this suit, you basically get 14mm of neoprene over your torso and abdomen. So that will basically keep you fairly warm in chillier waters. So yeah, even though this is over 16 years old now, it is basically still in fairly good nick. That just goes to show that if you take care of your equipment, it will last you a long time. And a little bit of a caveat here as well, since it's a little bit older and so on and had seen some use, the wrists and specifically the ankles of this, there had been a little bit of tearing in the neoprene. But here I show you a little bit of a DIY thing. I used this little rubber cement that is made specifically for mending wetsuits, and it's for gluing together ripped neoprene. And what you basically use, I used a little bit of a plastic shot glass that I had a little bit of this glue in, and then I applied it with well, there is two different names for this one. Either you Brits usually call this a cotton bud, or if you're across the pond in the US or North America, it's basically known as a Q-tip. So Q-tip, cotton bud, pick your choose your pick, whatever you want. Potato, tomato, tomato, you know, love child bears many names. So basically, this one was what I learned in for the first time, and yeah, it has served me also fairly well during the when I learned again to scuba dive for CMAS in 2020, which was basically the best thing that happened to me in 2020. So yes, there is not much more to say. This is basically a solid semi-dry in my opinion. It has served me well for a time. So yeah, now let's go on to something a little bit more special. Well, here we have the first part of this little special piece. This is a jumpsuit or undersuit that is used for colder weather diving. Well, this is not something you just go diving in this as is. This is a undersuit made with a fleece lining. For you guys who grew up in the 90s, you might know that fleece was all the rage. Anything from construction worker, forest workers and so on. And it became, at least here in Sweden, it was at one part all the rage because apparently many fleece garments were made with recycled PET bottles. That was kind of a big deal in the early 90s. The first part of recycled plastic that was turned into clothing. But what do we have that you use this underneath? I mean, even if you're using a semi-dry, this will get cold because it will get wet, and you won't really have that much of insulation from it. Well, this is it. Oh yes, this is the Big Daddy. I haven't featured this has shown up a little bit in videos before because it was in its carry bag. But what is it then? Well, it's the Northerndiver Vortex.
Anyway, meet my new hellhound, Vortex. Unlike you, he actually does his job well.
It's the model. Basically, Northerndiver is the maker of some really great dry suits, which this is by Northerndiver, and the model name is Vortex. So yeah.
I'm Vortex!
Anyway, well, what is this then? Well, for you guys that don't really know about it, this is a dry suit. And what is specific with the dry suit? Well, contrary to the wetsuits that I have shown, and wetsuit and semi-dry that I've shown previously, this one is made to keep you completely dry while diving. And there are some special features for this, and if you are interested in using a dry suit like this one, you actually need to take a special course for it. This is a specialty course in itself to be certified to use one of these, because it has some actual pretty special skills that are needed to be practiced and refined in order to use. So basically, a dry suit can basically be turned into two different categories. You either have a neoprene dry suit, which was what I started to learn in during the dry suit course, and the thing with a neoprene dive suit, since I used both types, the neoprene version, they expand and contract a little bit more like a balloon. They sit fairly tight on you like a wetsuit, but when you inflate it, you can actually feel more the air moving around you. But unfortunately, the neoprene dry suit that I used during the course unfortunately developed a kind of leak. One was basically by one of the boot ankles that I actually felt even at the first practice in the pool, and the second was actually the power inflator that you can see on the chest here on the Northerndiver, and that was basically that every time I inflated the suit, the neoprene version, I felt that it actually came in both air and water. So I felt I was getting soaked every time I tried to inflate the suit. But anyway, then it actually, when we did the final dives, the instructor actually pulled with him another one, and this suit actually, which is a shell suit, which is basically the second type of dry suit there is. So you basically have the neoprene suit and you have a shell suit, and shell suits are also sometimes referred to as tri-laminate dry suits or shell suit, which basically means that this is non-flexible. It's a rigid material that doesn't stretch or anything. So a negative with that is that you might get more suit squeeze with a tri-laminate or a tri-laminate dry suit, but there are advantages and disadvantages of all types. But anyway, these suits either have special neoprene cuffs and so on, but this one I can probably show you a little bit here. You have a cuff with the neoprene, but inside you also have a latex cuff link or latex cuff. And the same goes for the neck. You have a neck ring that is made of latex rubber. So it's a little bit of a thing if you have an allergy to it, but and it requires a little bit of TLC, tender love and care, because if you're going to use one of these, two things you really need to have in your Save a Dive kit, or basically your mandatory dive kit, is some wax and some talcum powder. The talcum powder is to be put on the cuffs that are made of latex, and that is because it will condition the rubber and it will prevent it from degrading. And it also will help you slip the suit on. So that's the first benefit with using talcum powder. And then you have wax that you need to use with a dry suit like this. And what is the wax used for? Well, every dry suit uses a gas and liquid gas and liquid proof zip. It's a special type of zip that actually was developed by NASA for their spacesuits. So there is a kind of, the zip actually has a space connection. So it was used on spacesuits in order to keep the astronaut or cosmonaut alive, and now we're also using it in dry suits in order to keep the air in the suit and the water out of it, which means that that zip is fairly expensive. I know that the price about can be to replace a dry suit zip can be upwards of 3,000 Swedish kroner to replace it. But yeah, so that's why you really need to take care of it using wax, so you don't hear a metal to metal grinding noise. Instead, it should be a smooth operation of zipping up and unzipping the special dry suit zipper. Let's see here more then. Well, some dry suits have another double zip, which it basically is you have the gas and liquid proof zip, and then over the top you have a standard zip that basically just zips over a flap in order to protect it. But this one, it has basically just a flap, a fabric flap that is pulled over and secured with Velcro. So that's a little bit of the way they have chosen to do with this suit. And yeah, what else? Another special thing with dry suits are that the boots are attached to the suit itself. As you can see here you can see a example of the way they are attached to each other. It is a neo-vulcanized hard sole made of rubber, and this is basically, normally my shoe size are 39-40 European. This is basically a US size 8 or a European 42. So for me, just putting my feet in it would be a little bit too large, but since when you're using a dry suit, you basically have double pairs of socks, a thin sock and then a thicker sock on top of it to minimize any friction wounds. So that's a little bit of a top tip there. Secondly, you have this little rubber stud on the back of the shoe. Why do you have this? Well, it's basically that the fin strap is supposed to go on top of this stud in order to keep the fin from falling off. So basically that's a little bit of it. So yeah, the story then was that how I got this suit. It was basically that, as stated, the neoprene suit that I had used during training had developed a leak. The instructor didn't have the time to, mend it in time for our dives, and I tried this on at a gas station, actually, Gulf in Tierp. I had to be a little bit of a dry suit model there, and I tried this on, and everybody started looking at me like, whoa, this fit me like a glove. And I was told that this hadn't been used that much because very few people had the exact measurements in order to get this, so to be able to have this on. So I basically said, well, I might just as well buy this, because if so few people can have it, can use it, and it fits me like it was tailor-made, there's no reason why I shouldn't. So yeah, that's how I bought this dry suit actually. I know there is a version 2 of the Vortex out there, but a little bit of the other features that a dry suit has. Most dry suits have this, a little bit of a pocket on on the leg. And what is it for? Well, mostly this is for having a spare mask or a DSMB or something like that. So there is a little bit of gear that you can have this in this pocket. So I would probably use this to carry a spare mask. Yeah, we have the power inflator button here, and then contrary to a BCD, when you have two buttons to let air in and let air out, it's a little bit more of a passive system on a drysuit. You basically have up here on the almost on the upper arm of the left arm, you have a valve that you can probably hear this. It's notched, and what does it say here? Stepped outflow valve, I should probably say. If you turn it counterclockwise, you open it, and if you turn it clockwise, you're basically shutting it out, or you're shutting it. So you have to find your sweet spot on this one when you are diving in order to be able to let air out and put air back in without it flowing out directly. So there is this little caveat that when you are diving with a dry suit, you basically need to do something like this and something like this in order to get the air to flow out of the outflow valve. So that's a little bit of the trick using a dry suit, but really fun, really great gear to have. And if you live in Scandinavia, and there is even places in the world where it is mandatory, if you want to dive there at all, you need to have a dry suit. A specific case in point that is on my bucket list is a place in Iceland where you actually dive in a river, and when you spread your arms apart, you're actually touching two different continental plates. And that part, you basically are diving in glacier water, which is extremely cold, and then they've said that it's basically mandatory for you to need to use a dry suit. So yeah, I'm all set for that trip, which is basically on my bucket list. But I think that this is all for me for now. I hope you have found any of this interesting or just me rambling. And as always, this is Tobias Bergström from T.B.Photo X1.5 to FX, and I'd like to see you guys in the next video. And as always, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh yeah, and please keep in mind, if you find this uninformative and boring, don't forget to press the thumbs down button twice. So take care from now on. Bye.